Hey, oh,
Hello.
hey, Will, how's it going?
I'm doing very well, thank you. How are you, Chris?
Oh, I'm having a fantastic day. I got all the lights up. I've got Thanksgiving under the belt. I have 2 Thanksgivings under the belt. I'm just so grateful. So yeah,
Nice
how
to
are you?
hear. Yeah, that's
Are
great.
you doing all right?
Mostly, yeah. I sprained my ankle the other day, so I'm hobbling around everywhere, and then my home internet went over, so I'm somewhere else doing this, but making it work.
Oh, well, hang on. So let me get this straight. You can't walk, and you have no internet, and yet you're here to bring us Data Activator. Is that right?
Got to be here for you, man. Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
always.
oh, that's fantastic. Oh, and we've got people from Nigeria on the
That's great.
online. So how awesome is that? We are spanning the globe already, so that's great. Good to see
That's
you,
really
and we've
cool.
got our
That's really
friends over
cool.
on LinkedIn and X. So um, good to see you
Awesome
guys
stuff.
there as well. So you know, oh, and there's of course Aaron is here as well. Post if you're where you're from inside the chat. And I've got something here that I really want to understand. How many people are already using Data Activator? Right before we even talk about it, I would like to know if you've tried it. Are you familiar with what it is? Or what are you doing with it? That's something I'd like to just get a feel for because uh, Will, I mean, you showed this to me how long ago? Like in the whole like when this was
6 months,
inception.
maybe 9 months ago, maybe even a little longer than that. It's
Yeah,
been brewing for a little while. Let's put it that way.
yeah. And straight up, I thought when I saw this, I'm like, this is going to transform the way people interact with data because now it's going to take us from like like just seeing data to like letting data drive what we're doing here. So I was just
Yeah,
super excited. Oh, we
yeah,
got
and
Tristan
I
from
mean,
France here. Yeah,
hey, I know there's a lot of people using it, and when we launched the public preview in October, we were actually surprised by how many people went and tried it out. It's
yeah.
been really good to see a load of people come and say, as you said, right? I've got this data. I look at it every day. Why can't something do that for me? Why can't we help get the data linked straight to the action that I would be taking? Why can't I automate some of that? And it seems to be solving problems for people. It's just brilliant.
Well, and so we're going to get into that in just a second because I'm going to make a statement here. I think Data Activator is going to save businesses the second they start using it. Like someone is going to save their job, save their business, save their department by using Data Activator to notify them when some complex scenario has taken place to do something. That Data Activator is super powerful.
Yeah,
But we're going
it's
to get into
awesome.
that in just a second. I want to do introductions. Not everyone knows Will. Will, for my audience, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so I'm Will Thompson. I am the group product manager for Data Activator. It's a very fancy title, but basically means I lead the direction of the product in terms of what it does and what problems it tries to solve. And my main job, there's me and 2 guys who report to me, about to be a third one, actually. It's very exciting. We're growing the team. Our job really is to go to the market, go to all of our existing Fabric customers and new customers as well, and find out like where can our tools and our capability help them, and listen to those problems, listen to the scenarios that they want that help with, and then translate it back to the engineers to say, hey, this is what we need to go build to be able to help these customers be successful. And so I've been running this team for a little over a year now. Before that, I was in the Power BI world, and a lot of people will know me from that. I looked after Power BI Desktop for a while. I looked after the DAX and modeling world. I looked after visuals way back when. So I was on the Power BI team since since before it was Power BI really, since 2012. Was when I moved over to the engineering world. Before that,
Yeah.
I was at Microsoft in the sales world in the UK,
Ah.
talking to again, it's like talking to customers and helping understand what their business problems are they're trying to solve, and then how can our BI solution, as it was then, reporting services, integration services, analysis services. How can we apply that to those problems that they're trying to solve, and help make things better?
Yeah, I mean, Will, you've done so much for this space. I mean, really, I mean, Tristan's calling it out. Like, thank you so much for all your hard work in this area. And actually, this kind of leads into the like leading question that I like to ask of people is like, I like to understand like what your personal journey was from like 5-year-old Will who wanted to be a firefighter or policeman or superhero. How did you go from that to the group product manager for Data Activator? How did that occur?
It's a really topical conversation because I've got twin girls. They're 8, so the same age as Power BI. They were born in May, and we launched Power BI in July. It's funny. That's our 3 babies, and we're having the same conversation with the girls at the moment because one of them desperately wants to work in a zoo. She wants to work with cheetahs and wild animals, and the other one doesn't know quite so sure, but she thinks she wants to be like a stylist and do hair and nails and stuff. It's things that kids love, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, will that be something that they continue to love when they're 18, 25, getting into their careers and figuring out what they want to do? So for me, at aged 5 or 8 or 10, I had no idea what I wanted to do. It was not a pre-envisaged career that I thought I'd get into. I when I was a teenager, I really got into like product design, like industrial product design, and architecture. And I kind of had an idea that I was going to go and be a built environment architect, or maybe like a civil engineer or something. I think I spent too much time playing SimCity as a kid, so I wanted to do road planning and all that sort of stuff. But something in that kind of built environment space. And then I looked at, okay, well, if I wanted to be an architect, what would I have to do at university? Oh, I just go and study for years and years and years. I don't want to do 7 years of an architecture degree to go and design car parks. It sounds like too much work. And I kind of thought to myself, well, okay, what else do I like? Well, I love computers. I've always been a big computer geek. There's a great picture of me aged, about 5, with BBC Micro, sitting in my parents' front room or wherever, and I'm sitting in front of the keyboard with a big CRT monitor, and I'm carrying something on my fingers. I'm obviously doing something sort of semi-educational. And so I thought, okay, well, computing is obviously a thing that I could do and pick up. So I went and studied that when I was at university. And I wanted to do something that was a little bit more vocational than just computer science.
Sure.
So half of my degree course was geographical information systems. So how do we use, again, it's like that built environment thing, how do we use computers to help understand, spatial relationships and data, or how do we model the real world in a digital environment? And I think some of that was kind of what got me into thinking about, okay, well, the world of data and the world of applying technology to solve those kind of problems must have kind of inspired something. I did like some data science modules as well. Some, and this was 2003 or something. Yeah. So I learned a bit about the statistics behind it, and we used a bit of SPSS and some of those packages that have been around forever.
So hang on. So you were into geospatial, and you were on the Power BI visualization team.
Yeah, I mean, eventually I got back into that. I mean, so the mapping piece that I spent such a long time with, I never did anything with once I started working at Microsoft until SQL Server 2008 R2 came out, and it had maps in it. I was like, wow, this is great. This is my thing. I know this stuff. So talking to customers about that and getting into the geospatial world when SQL must have been 2005, 2008, I forget now, had geospatial data types, and I kind of got into that again. And then, when I moved to the engineering team and I got put on Power BI visuals, it's like, great. And I owned tables, and I owned charts, and somebody else owned maps. I mean, there is some irony here that this person who had spent, I'd spent the best part of 4 years studying cartography and mapping and how to use digital tools to do mapping, then I didn't actually own that feature.
Well, maybe that explains the state of mapping in Power BI.
Maybe so. Well, I mean, I can't. Unfortunately, I can't completely devolve myself of responsibility, because then when I came back, so I spent a bit of time looking after visuals, went away for 6 months to actually go and implement. This was a really fun little side journey that I went on. Was once Power BI had launched and we'd spent, I don't know, 18 months, 2 years with it out in the market, I was like, okay, looking for a new challenge. What could I do? And it was about the time that Power BI and the Power Platform were kind of coming together, and we were bringing in a bunch of other stuff under. James Phillips was the guy who was running the org, and he said, I need somebody to go and build an internal implementation of Power BI so that we can monitor all of the different business units, so that we know how many users we've got across all these different products, and we kind of have a common way of reporting and putting the other stuff into dashboards. And I was like, great, I'd love to go do that, because it would give me as a product manager on the team, a feel for actually what does it really mean to go and implement this stuff.
Right.
And it's something that, as product managers, we're a little devolved from actually implementing, disconnected from actually doing it. Like we use it in our day-to-day to kind of do some analytics on, telemetry or how people are using the products. But we tend to do it because we all love it. We tend to do it as individuals. We don't always there's not very many people on the team who have had that experience of how do I actually roll it out across a large organization, which folks like you will be doing every day. That's your job, is rolling it out at that scale and making sure that it adheres to all of the governance and all the processes that are in that sort of organization. And Microsoft doesn't have that culture because it's very kind of like everybody's a technologist, so we all just do it ourselves. So that's been a really interesting kind of journey for me to go spend a bit of time doing that. And it was me and there's a guy called Hayden Richardson, who's another GPM on the Power BI team. We went off and did that for 6 months or so. And that was great.
Hayden still around?
Hayden's still about. Yeah. He's still over in the Power BI world. Then when I went back into the Power BI product team, looked after the DAX and modeling things. So I saw Tristan's comment about creating DAX. Can we create DAX calculated columns in Data Activator? The question, Tristan, is really, should we create DAX calculated columns in Data Activator? And I think we all know the answer.
Yes, the answer is no DAX columns, right? That is our de facto default.
Chris's latest going on about DAX columns.
But to be clear, I think this is a 5 to 10 year war that I'm starting now, because I think it's going to take 5 to 10 years to win this battle. I don't have real short-sighted. I don't think by spring we'll have a victory in this front. I think it's a long battle. But if you don't start a 10-year battle, it's just going to take that much longer to get through it. So
got to start at some point. I think the interesting thing in the Data Activator world, and we'll talk more about it from a product point of view, is that so many of those concepts and principles that I was looking after in the DAX world, and I've got however many years of BI experience kind of backing it up, all go out the window, because we're not talking about warehouses and star schemas and columns and measures and stuff. We're talking about events. And real-time streaming data looks very different, and the way that you have to think about modeling it is quite different. It's maybe not entirely, it's not like throw everything you knew about it out the window. The principles of what you're trying to do with the data, what the business outcomes that you're trying to drive, still apply, but the modeling techniques, the things you have to worry about change, and the kind of the knobs and dials that you've got to optimize the system change. Whether it's like you've got events coming through in a stream, you want to act on some of those events, but what if some of them arrive late? What if there's some network issue that means a couple of those events arrive a minute late or 2 minutes late? How long are you willing to wait before you say, okay, we've got that minute's worth of data? What latencies are you willing to allow? It's not an issue in the batch world. Typically if we're loading something once a day, or even 3 or 4 times a day, you just load what's there, and if it's not there, you don't worry about it because it will get loaded next time, and the latencies are not that important. In the real-time world, we have to worry about these things, and that's been a really interesting mindset shift for me to kind of unpick some of the things. Like, okay, you don't have to worry about that stuff that you worried about in the BI world. You don't have to worry about it here, but here's a bunch of other stuff that you have to think about instead. That's been really interesting.
Let's get into this in just a second. Kevin, I can hear Kevin talking to me. He's like, you have to start with the rules, and so we do have a few rules inside of here. Number one, we are here to answer your questions, right? Like, I do want to learn from Will on this stuff, but please, if you have questions, and we've already got this started in the chat, so you guys are good at this, you know this. But if anyone's new here, hit hashtag new, because I'd like to see new people in the chat. That'd be awesome. But please prefix your question with a Q so we can make sure they get queued up. And please don't spam them. Any of the well, I guess just Power BI guy is a moderator. He could block you, or I could block you. But if you're spamming stuff, we're not a big enough group where that's much of an issue. So that hasn't been an issue. But I'm letting you know, if Tristan, if you get out of hand, we're bringing the hammer down. All right. So with that though, we are gonna dive into it, and we do take our communal sip. So I think we've done this on every live stream. Yes, we won't make Amanda
because I'm not in my regular location. I don't have anything with me. I would normally have. It would normally be a cup of very English tea. It would normally be one of the greatest things about working from home. My wife, who is a superstar, has been quite good at kind of just bringing me constant streams of tea. Talking about streaming data, streams of tea. She'll come along and you'll see her just kind of appear in the background and deliver me a mug, and it'll be common or garden English breakfast tea. Bit of milk, no sugar. Don't need sugar. I'm sweet enough as it is. What have you got, Chris?
Well, so I've been rotating through different protein shakes. So we've got a little bit of a protein drink today.
Nice.
So we're gonna dive right into that, and then we're gonna hit into Microsoft Activator. So grab your cup, grab your tea, grab your coffee, grab your protein shake, grab whatever you got, and let's do that communal sip, and then we'll dive into it. So
it's important to hydrate. Very good.
Yes, it is important to hydrate. And if you're into keto, I didn't know what keto was until my wife came and told me what keto was. Like, I think it was like 10 days ago, and I lost 16 pounds in 10 days. Like, that stuff is unbelievably effective. So give that a shot. That's not an advertisement, because I don't know how I'd advertise it. Right? It works quite well. All right, let's head over to what is, and for a baseline, what the heck is Data Activator? How does this work? How does this operate?
So let's put it in context of the rest of Fabric. So Microsoft Fabric, this new data platform that Microsoft has been building recently, and that for the most part went to GA at Ignite a couple of weeks ago. So Fabric is this data platform that provides a whole bunch of different capabilities for data ingestion, data engineering, all the analytic capabilities. And there's also a set of capabilities in there around real-time analytics. And Data Activator sits alongside those. We're actually part of the same kind of team organization within the Fabric world. But where Data Activator sits is saying, you've done all of this work to get your data pulled into this single platform. You've done your work to analyze it, pull out interesting insights, stick it in a report to visualize it, help people understand what those patterns are in that data. But then what? Ultimately, what you're trying to do with all this data is make some change or have some input into a business process that drives the performance of your business. Some way of saying, hey, when I see a particular pattern happening, whether that's, my sales drop, or we see a load of delays in our packages being delivered, or we've got a bunch of staff who are suddenly not able to deal with the incoming call volume in a call center, there's some action that we need to take. And whether that's simply notifying somebody, or maybe reaching into a system to actually tweak or tune something automatically, calling out to go and set some meeting requests up, whatever it might be, the action that you want to take. Data Activator sits there. So in a way of monitoring data, looking for particular conditions, and then taking an action, that's where Data Activator sits. And the reason that we put it alongside everything else here in Fabric is that we don't really care where the data is coming from that we're going to go monitor. We can just as happily sit on top of one of these real-time streams as we can on top of a Power BI report. We think about a bunch of data in a report that's being loaded maybe once a day. It's just a slow-moving stream. Still a stream, just only gets updated once a day. And to us, it all looks the same.
Or like a flood and then a drop.
Yeah,
It's
a big flood of data that comes in once a day. Yeah, great. But it's fine. We don't mind. And over time, we're going to extend that further along that diagram so that we can sit directly on top of things like the data warehouse, sit on top of your data factory, on top of your data engineering. Ideally, I think there's a great idea, a great place where we can get to eventually, where a data scientist building a notebook says, I've got this model that I've created that pulls in a bunch of data, does a bunch of fraud detection, or uses whatever kind of smart data sciencey stuff that they do, like magic. And the output is, a scored list of potential fraud cases or something like that. Okay, great. Then what? Somebody goes and does something with that information. Well, Data Activator can sit on top of that notebook, check it as it's being run continually over that new data. All your logic is in that notebook, but Data Activator can say, okay, for each of those outputs, we'll go and do a thing. Or maybe we'll do some further processing on it. If the number of potential fraud cases in a particular account that you've got, or the number of potential fraud cases for a particular customer or whatever, goes over a certain threshold, we'll go do a thing. So linking together all of those different components, it's why Fabric as a platform has got so much potential value, right? When you think about starting using these two things together.
And so I think maybe that gets into like a question that Tristan was kind of getting at it, and I think we kind of talked about it, like, because we have two real low-code automation tools that are at our hands. We've got Power Automate, and now we have Data Activator. Data Activator hooks into Power Automate. So can we talk about, like, why would I use, is Power, as Tristan said, is Power Automate or Data Activator just for real-time streaming stuff, and then we use Power Automate for everything else? What's your
it's a good question. We get this a lot when people sort of see what you can do at Data Activator. There's often this question, like, where's the gray area, like where's the overlap between those two? And that first question about, like, is it just relevant for real-time, near real-time data? As I said, we don't really care how quickly or what the latency is of the data coming to Data Activator. We'll very happily sit on top of that, whether it's fast-moving or slow-moving. And in fact, combinations of the two, we can't quite do in the product yet, but we're planning to be able to say, okay, well, maybe I've got some reference data that's slower moving that comes from a data warehouse or comes from a Power BI report. Only gets updated once a day, but I'm going to combine it with the real-time streams so that I can say, tell me when the tire pressure, the data from these sensors about my tire pressures come and go over or below a certain threshold. But the alerts that I want to send have to go to a particular driver who's driving that truck. And I've got that in some reference data. I want to combine the two, and the event fires. I just need to know what's the latest value from that reference data. Go grab that. Okay, and that's going to tell me which driver I need to go and send an alert to. So combining that data together is something that Data Activator is very good at, and it's something that's difficult to do in Power Automate. If you think about trying to sit on top of a stream of data from Power Automate, I know they've got connectors to event hubs, but kind of everything that you need to know about how to evaluate that workflow needs to be in that event. It's possible, but it's very clunky to say, okay, when an event comes in, go and run a query to go and get some of the data, or even worse, it's like go and run a query to look at the history of those events. If I wanted to know what's the delta between the latest one and the previous one, how do I go in one Power Automate flow and go back and get the previous value and then continue evaluating my flow? That's hard, if not impossible. Right. Excuse me. That's really where Data Activator shines. We are about looking at a series of data points that represents a value going up and down, or a series of events that are coming in, and being able to say, tell me when a certain number of them happens in a time period, or look at the previous one, do some calculation, and tell me when that hits a certain threshold. Even further down the road, we're not there yet, but we'd like to be able to do things like simple state machines. So I've got maybe something that represents a user's journey around an application. They came to our insurance application, and they looked at auto insurance, and they bought that. Then they went and looked at homeowners insurance. but they didn't buy it. There's a series of events that we've got in terms of what the user did. The action that we might take is, let's send them an email and say, hey, you look like you looked at that homeowner's insurance. You've already bought the auto insurance. We'll give you a discount on it. You know, setting up that kind of state machine. So again, how would you do that with Power Automate?
Yeah,
that's
no,
a really tough one.
That's right. Well, and one of the things that when I first saw Power Automate, this looked like the opportunity to address those complex automations that people in business would do all the time, right? Like if I put my salesman shoes on and I think, okay, hey, if I have a small customer who starts to really start to spend over a large period of time, I want to know about that to set up a meeting to have additional conversation. Or conversely, and this is where I say Power Automate is going to save people's businesses. If I've got customers who suddenly have a huge uptick in customer service incidents, I want to know about that so I can go out there and I can address that problem, because keeping a customer happy is so much easier and more valuable than trying to land new customers, right?
Yeah.
And that's where Data Activator fits, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it really is. I think being able to look at what happens over quite a potentially long period of time and understand those patterns and the common behaviors maybe that you see from a particular customer, and proactively say, when you see that pattern occurring, go and do a thing. And we talk about kind of in the future, where do we want Data Activator to end up? There's this vision that we've got for applying AI in these cases as well, where the models, the rules, the conditions, the logic that the Data Activator might express can be tailored and tuned as the business changes and as the patterns that we see evolve. So we've talked about kind of pulling data in from Power BI from event streams, but this no code environment that we have in the middle to be able to build these rules and the relationships between customers and purchases and whatever, and the triggers that go along with those, they need somebody to be able to go and say, yes, when this value crosses this threshold 5 times in a 10-minute period, then we want to fire a trigger. But what if you don't know what those rules are? What if you just want to say something went wrong at 1 a.m. last night? I can show you all the data and I can say there was a problem there. And the system and the AI magic in the system can go and figure out from all those signals, or possibly all that noise, where's the signal? What are the rules and conditions? This thing went up and this thing went down. And they go up and down all the time, but they went up and down at the same time. Or one went up whilst one went down, something like that. That's the interesting condition. It can figure that out for you. We can use some Copilot and some magic to say, hey, that's the that's the trigger, that's the rule that you want to look for in the future, and then go take whatever actions needed.
Well, and I really like this outline of put a message in Teams, send an email, and then do something with Power Automate, because isn't that kind of how you'd want to be notified to make sure that whatever you've created in Data Activator is the appropriate response?
Yeah.
I don't want my clients emailed, and spammed a billion times because I didn't configure my Automate or my Data Activator, right?
We've got a lot to do, I think, around managing the spam potential for this as well. So at the moment, we can direct the messages to the appropriate person based on the data that's coming in. So if the events and the data that you've got in there, or that reference data has, you can find the appropriate email to send this notification to. Sure, we can direct it to the right person, but you're still going to get an alert every time that trigger fires. There's some things that you can do today to say, okay, well, I'm going to kind of create these higher order events where it's like I'm looking at the number of times something went wrong. Actually, that is just a new event stream. We're not going to fire an email each time something goes wrong, but we're going to count the number of times it goes wrong. And in a 24-hour period, if it goes wrong 24 times or how many times, then we're going to go send that message. So you can do a little bit of that today, but we want to make that a lot simpler to say, hey, I don't want to spam people all the time. I want to just send like a daily digest. Here's all the times that something went wrong just over the course of a day. Or maybe I'll send you an email the first time it goes wrong, but if there's subsequent issues over a 1 hour period, don't bother sending any more emails. I'm on it. We also hear some requirements about like escalation. The first time it goes wrong, send me an email. If it goes wrong 10 times, give me a phone call. If it goes wrong 20 times and I still haven't done anything about it, email my manager. Those escalation paths are something that we are thinking about building into those action that action system component on the right hand side of this diagram, to make sure that those notifications go to the right people at the right frequency, so that it's actionable rather than just becoming more noise.
Right. And I think that's the biggest risk, is that noise event can be just deafening. Right.
Yeah.
I know when I was Power BI admin in a large organization, like I was getting 15,000 emails a day on data sets that failed. Like, I don't know. I didn't do anything with any of those. Right. Like, it was impossible for Power BI to alert me to something that was of relevance, because there was just too much noise. Right.
Yeah. And actually finding the right person to send the alert to is really important. And we've already talked about, yes, I could pick out the email address but based on the data that's coming through, I can pick out an email address and send that email to the right person. But even more useful is like sending it to a whole Teams channel, so that there's potentially many people on the end of that who can take an action based on the alert. But there's also kind of the concept of, well, when something goes wrong with the trigger itself, maybe we didn't receive any data for a while because there's some upstream system that's, sorry, I don't know, is that upstream or downstream? Upstream system that's not sending us the data properly. Well, we should notify you to say, hey, there's something wrong with your trigger. You're not going to get the alerts that you'd expect to get. But who does that go to? Go to the person who created the alert, or should it go to the same people who received it? Because they probably, if that's like some ops, some person in the operations world who's actually like fixing the issues, they probably can't do anything about the data that's coming in. That needs to go to probably somebody else, actually, not even the person who created the trigger. So there's again, this is kind of this is what I mean about these operational systems. It's very different to the BI world, and we have to think about like there's some slight differences there about like what expectations people have about how they can build these systems and how these things put together.
Well, I think that does make sense. It kind of even lends to the question James has about, can Data Activator detect an anomaly in a model, tell Power Automate to refresh that model, wait for the refresh to finish, then check to see that the anomaly still exists, and only then send an alert? We do something like that, or
depending on the scenario, like I don't know whether we have exactly what we'd need to support that today, but in principle, yes. Like the idea that, okay, I've got this stream of data, I find an anomaly in it. One of the really common use cases we're hearing is people who want to check like a data pipeline health. So run a data pipeline, and when it finishes, emit an event that says, hey, we just ran, it took 2 hours to load, we did 10,000 rows. Great, everything looks good. The next day it runs again and it only loads 2,000 rows. It took 30 seconds. Like, okay, well, it didn't fail as such, but that's weird. Like, it's a lot less than we'd expect. So there's an anomaly. Let's go detect that. Now, rather than notifying somebody, the first thing we'll do is just run the pipeline again, because maybe there's some transient issue. Maybe we'll run it again, and this time it will load all the data. Everything will be good. Don't need to alert anybody. But we'll just listen to that next event that says, hey, the pipeline finished. Oh, okay, now it loaded 10,000 rows, no problem. Okay, it's still loading 2,000 rows. Now let's go and send that alert. So yeah, you could totally set that up, assuming that you're getting the right data through and you're sending the right things. Those kind of we kind of internally we've been calling them kind of system events, like the things that the rest of Fabric are emitting. That's something we're looking at a little bit further out. How can we expose more of that? It's like the sort of stuff that you'd get in the Fabric admin logs, Power BI admin logs. How can we expose that for people to use in Data Activator to help manage the way that they're using Fabric? It's not necessarily the business results, but managing the data platform. There's a ton of value in exposing that stuff as well. I remember one of the very first kind of times we spoke to a few customers about this. There was a guy who was saying, I want to get a notification, or at least I want to set up a trigger the first time a user opens a particular Power BI report. We've got this report that we send out to everybody in our organization, and the first time that somebody opens it, I want to send them an email with a bunch of like how to, just like what does the report show you? How do you interpret the values in that report? And I thought that's a really interesting case, because as a platform, as a product, on the product side, we've got telemetry that tells us when somebody opens a report. And we've got the user ID and we've got the report ID. And you know, we could expose that back to the person who owns the report, the creator of the report, so that they could stick an alert on top of it and say, if it's the first time you've seen that user do it, then go and do a thing. You know, those are really interesting kind of cases where, again, it's like, can you do that in Power Automate? Well, you sort of could, but how would you know it's the first time the user's done it? You have to keep that record somewhere and build that into it. Oh, we can handle that. It's like, hey, it's the first time. You know, this is the first unique usage of for that user. We can go and do that sort of thing. So that's again a little bit further out. We want to go and expose some of that things in the future, but give you a flavor for where we're going.
Well, and I absolutely love that. I would love like that story you're telling about like data quality testing in your pipelines. Like actually be able to like have that be an integrated component inside of your DevOps and all of your processing. That would be just fantastic for regression testing. And I'd love that. And Jai is asking, can we push like notifications into ServiceNow?
Right, through ServiceNow. So we don't have native connectors to ServiceNow and a bunch of other things. And frankly, we're not going to go build those as like native Data Activator integrations, because there's this wonderful tool called Power Automate, which is great with all those. It's got hundreds of those connectors. And so you can call a Power Automate workflow and you can pass through whatever kind of parameters you might need from the way the event has been handled and the way that we've detected those conditions, whatever information you need. You can pass that over to Power Automate and say, hey, go and call a flow that puts a ticket into ServiceNow. And you know, that offloads a bit of the connector work to their framework and says, hey, you know, if you've got some random esoteric system that, you know, you and 4 other people around the world use, there's probably a connector for it because people are building all those connectors. We're not going to go build that, but Power Automate can handle it, and so you can integrate it that way.
That's just honestly that's fantastic, and I love the story that you're outlining here, especially in this middle here, that data models that you could stick on top of anything.
Yeah.
And then creating that, like having our data scientists be able to directly integrate their work with the outcomes and the work that our business users are doing. Just this completes the cycle and the story, right? It's just such an awesome capability. This is fantastic. Now,
why don't we jump into a little demo, and I'll kind of show you a little bit of kind of how this works. Are we on the same page? Is this exactly reading your mind? Yeah, nice.
Yeah, that's great.
All right, cool. So the scenario that I have for this little demo is around these rental bikes. So for those of you who didn't figure it out already from my accent, I'm from the UK. I didn't grow up in London, but I used to go there all the time for work. And you'll see these bikes whizzing around the city. There's 800 or so of these like docking station points where you can pick up a bike, use an app to unlock it, take it somewhere else, drop it off, and carry on your day. And you get them all over the world, right? So these exist in big cities all over the place. The cool about London is that there's actually a public API that you can use to see how many bikes are available and how many open spaces there are at any of the docking stations around the city. Transport for London are the company who operate it, and they make all that data available in the public for free. And we thought this is a great idea. We can call that REST API, not directly. So I just saw James's comment. Actually, it's really relevant here. We're calling that docking station API actually using Livestream. We're actually doing a little bit more behind the scenes right now, but again, the Livestream team are working on this, where you'll be able to go and just pull that REST API on a schedule, and pull that data, kind of turn it into a stream and pull it into Fabric. So what we're doing at the moment, pulling that API, processing it with Livestream, and pushing it into our docking station's reflex. So the item that you create when you're using Data Activator, we call it a reflex. In the same way that in Power BI, you create a report, in Data Activator, you create a reflex. And there's a couple of reasons why we call it a reflex. Partly is because that's what our code name was, which we love. But it describes kind of what we're doing. It's this kind of stimulus response system. You think about your reflexes in your body. There's something that causes, there's some stimulus that causes this action to happen. That's kind of what we're doing here with Data Activator. We're listening for these inputs, taking an action accordingly. we talk about kind of building a digital nervous system for your business. So really kind of marketing phrase, but I love it as an aspiration of what we want to do and what we want to enable for people. So,
right. I mean, yeah, being able to have every limb in your organization be able to sense and feel what's going on around it, and then take automatic responses. That's awesome, right? And it is in a low code framework, right? Like this is Activator, right? This is Data Activator here, right?
yeah. So what we're actually looking at here is the event stream. So this is on the input. I see James's comment was about output. We'll come back to that later. So yeah, this is actually the input side. Event streams is the artifact we're using to pull that data in. And then once it's being pushed into the Data Activator reflex, this is the reflex view. So I'm here in the data view where I'm looking at, these are all the different events that we're listening to, the streams that we're looking at. And you can see these docking station events are coming through. So this is real time, pulling that REST API and pulling in the data. As these rows kind of flash up in green, this is new information coming in. So you can see they're coming in a few every second. And we're basically just cycling through all those docking stations, saying how many, you won't see it on your phone yet, we'll come back to that. How many bikes are available in each of these docking stations at any given time. And so there's information about the street, the neighborhood, latitude and longitude of it. So back to my mapping stuff. And then how many bikes are available and how many empty slots there are. So when we build these models, these triggers in Data Activator, we have to say, how do we interpret all these events? Because as a human, you can look at this and you know what a street is, you know what a neighborhood is. How do we tell the system what to look at, what to identify? So we're going to create one of these docking station objects to track the information that's coming in for each of these. And the column in these events that tells us how to uniquely identify one of these docking stations is this bike point column. So it's just got an ID column that goes along with it. Now I could also choose the other fields from these events that are relevant for me in building these triggers. We see quite often that, particularly with like IoT streams, there's a whole bunch of information that comes through that might tell you about, the battery level of the IoT sensor, or like the signal strength of its Wi-Fi connection. A lot of the time we don't care about that. Yeah, sure, if you're the infrastructure person, you do care about it. But for the actual business event data, that might not be relevant. So you don't need to bring that all in. Just choose the relevant pieces. And then when we come over to design mode, this is going to hopefully drop us over. Yeah. And we can see that we've built this docking station object. It's bringing those events in, and there's a bunch of properties that are going along with that they're going to pull out the values from those columns in the events and show them to us. Now, I spotted a little problem with my demo here that for some reason it's not rendering my charts. So I am going to flip over to a video version of it, and we're going to run this because you'll see the same sort of thing. So what we'd see then, here we go, great, is here's the values of how many bikes are available. What's the bike?
All right, I gotta say, hang on one second. Kudos for you on this level of preparation. Like, oh, my demo's not working.
I've got a video.
Let me pull up a video of this already up and going. Like, what the heck, man? That
for those
of
you who have been following me around over the last few weeks, you look. I've done this demo before, so I've got a video prepared. It's okay.
All right. Well, kudos. Okay. I'm sorry. Keep going.
Yeah, nice. Okay. So what we're looking at here is for each of these 5 bike points, what we do is we actually take a sample. You can see up in the corner here, there's 120 bike points overall that we've been looking at, but we're just sampling 5 of them here. Because if we tried to plot all 120 on this chart, you wouldn't be able to read it. It'd be a mess.
Right.
It's like there are some data visualization principles that it happens to be that I've spent however many years in the BI space learning about these best practices, so we're applying them here as well. So yeah, we're picking these 5, and you can see as the number of bikes get checked in, as people pick them up or drop them back off, these values go up and down. So what we actually want to do then is say, okay, let's use that and build a trigger on top of that. We want to do something when the number of bikes in any of these docking stations goes up or down. And in this case, the scenario here might be, if there's not enough bikes in a particular space, we need to go and send people out with a truck to say, hey, go and find a bike from somewhere else and redistribute them so that there's bikes available wherever people want to go and pick one up. So in building a trigger, what we have to do is say, what's the value that we want to check? what's the condition that we want to detect, what's the pattern we want to look for, and then what action do we want to take. So we're always doing this: select, detect, and act. That's the watchword for using Data Activator. What do I want to select? What do I want to detect? And what action do I want to take? So I'm going to start off by selecting that property, that byte count property that got created already. And that'll show us the same values going up and down again. And then the next thing is, okay, what's the condition that I want to detect here? So we can do a bunch of different things, whether it's, becomes greater than or less than a particular value. Let me just pause it there. When that value enters or exits a range, we can also trigger on top of, logical values like true, false values, or if you've got string values, just anytime it changes to or from a particular value. So we see again with kind of some IoT sensors, what they'll do is they'll emit like a status value. Am I running? Am I idle? Am I overheated? Whatever. You can react to those as well. It doesn't have to be a numeric thing. And there's a whole bunch of these that we're adding to over time as well. This is one of the areas where we want the most in terms of feedback. Like, what do you need in these conditions? We've done basic sort of numeric things, but is there something more complex that you need? I talked about kind of these state machines, tracking like user journeys or something. That's a much more advanced use case. We want to get there. What else is there? What else do you need? And actually, one of the things that we've added here, particularly for these numeric things, is this ability to say, rather than firing each time the number of available bytes becomes less than 3, I only want to fire an alert when we see it drop below that threshold, let's say 5 times over the course of an hour. Or maybe I want to say only fire this alert when the number goes below 3 and stays there for 15 minutes or something. Really good case in point here. I was talking to an airline, and they were looking at reacting to gate changes. So, you've got a bunch of people waiting around for the plane. It was meant to be coming in at gate 12. Some reason, something happening out on the airfield, which means that actually it's going to be coming in at a different gate 15. They said one of the most common things that happens is that it'll change, and then within a minute or two, it'll change again. And if it changes once, there's an indication that it's probably going to change a couple more times before they finally know where this plane's going to come in. And so they said, well, don't bother sending an alert every time it changes, because you'll just spam people and they'll be having to run around the terminal up and down, to get to the right gate. Monitor it, and once the gate has settled, and like we know that it's changed to a particular gate and it's stayed there for 10 minutes, then send the alert. And it's a really great way of just reducing the amount of spam that a system might generate. So you don't want to react every time. Wait until it's settled and we know we're a bit more confident about it. Give it a bit of time. And what you can see at the bottom here is, to help understand how often this trigger would have fired, across all of the values, not just the 5 that we've been sampling, across all of them, how often would this trigger have been activated? So we can see here, there's a spike here where, it would have fired twice in this time period at 3:05 UTC. There's a couple of other times here where it would have fired a bit more often. And that might help you kind of just tweak the values. What's the threshold that I care about? If my freezer temperature goes up and down, I'm going to send alert when it gets to 34 degrees. Well, actually, you set that in and you see, oh, it would have generated loads of alerts. Okay, maybe 35 degrees. Okay, it's a smaller number of alerts. There may be some, maybe some reason why it's got to be that value. But if you're just looking to say, hey, how can we just optimize what people are working on? You want to kind of tweak it and tune it a little bit.
Right. Maybe people are coming in and out, so it's no big deal. But otherwise, right? Like,
yeah, exactly.
I got
you want to do something on it. And then the last piece is then, what action do you want to take? So we talked about email, Teams message. I can use this custom action to go and call a Power Automate workflow as well. We'll come back to that one. It's great at the moment because I haven't set one up in this demo. But for something like Teams message, you'll see it, it fills it in with my details to start with. So everybody can see my email address, great. But then you can put in some other details as well. So you want to send some context with this message typically. So some kind of headline that's kind of going to grab people's attention when they get this message, same sort of thing you'd get in an email. And then you can put in an optional message as well. So what I did here in this headline was, you can see how I'm using these curly braces around street. What that does is says, go and get the latest value from the street column. So for the, when that trigger fires, for the event that fires that trigger, go get the street value as well, so we can send that through as context in this message. And we could use that here to do what I was saying about sending it to the appropriate person. If you had an email field that came through, you can put that in the recipients bucket, put the curly braces around it, and it will go and send that to the right person. So all looks good. So I'm going to send a test alert and pull in the Teams window, my video. Here we go. So this is the kind of alert that you get. So it's got that headline. It's pulled in Wellington Road as the street that fired the event. And then it gives me the information that I need about, like, when did the trigger fire, how many bikes there are, how many empty slots there are, what do I need to go do about it? So, as the person out in the truck, like, okay, great, I've got to get over to St. John's Wood, got to go look for some other bikes nearby, figure out where to go pick them up from, and redistribute them back to this street in Wellington Road to make sure there's stuff there for people to use next time they want to go pick up one of these bikes. Pretty cool, right? So
yeah, I mean, this is
this kind of operational alerting on top of streams of data. Think about how you would do this previously, right? You've got a bunch of Event Hub stuff to do. You've got a bunch of like streaming analytics code, whatever it might be. There's probably a bunch of engineers involved. This is not a low code. This has not been a low code environment before. And now we're making it, hopefully, I like to think, and the feedback we've got so far is that this is pretty straightforward.
It's definite. Well, actually, is there code in here?
Arguably, I've had people say, well, what you're doing is you're encoding the logic through the UI. So you are coding. I'm not writing script. I'm not pulling out my DAX skills or anything like that. So I don't need to argue. But no, there's not really any code here in the way that most people think about it. This is a properly no code solution.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh.
Cool.
And did you create this dashboard, or did it create it?
I did this dashboard. This is not the most beautiful report, but
with Copilot, we don't know these days. So.
yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So the other thing I wanted to point out here is, like, we've been talking about streaming data here, but not everybody's got that streaming data. But I bet everybody who watches this has got a Power BI report. And like I said before, we'll very happily sit on top of a Power BI report as well. So I'm going to go away from my demo here, because the video that I recorded is a few months old and we changed the UI a bit. So I wanted to show this live. Awesome. So let's say I've got a report here that I want to monitor this and send me an alert when some value changes here. You'll see this little set alert button on any of the visual menus. It's also up in the ribbon for your alerts. And this gives you a little pane here to fill out to go and create one of these triggers on the fly. So I can say, do you want to get email or Teams? What measure am I looking for? In this case, it's average occupancy rate. Tell me when it becomes greater than or less than changes from or to a particular value. Type in your threshold. And we do things like picking up all the filters from the slices and selections that you might have made in the report. So the alerts always run on the thing that you were looking at in this report. And that's been really important. It's just like, it should just work, right? You should just get what you expect. Then I need to go say, okay, where do I want to go save this? I'm going to put this back into I'll just leave it in my workspace, it's fine. And I can create a new reflex, give it a name. And when I go hit create alert, this is going to go set up that reflex, hook it up to the Power BI report, set a schedule so that it's going and looking at this report every hour to go pull in the latest values, set that condition and start the trigger running behind. So it's like, I don't need to do anything now. This is one of the reasons why I've changed. I wanted to show this live rather than the video, because that's it. All I need to do is fill out that pane. So for Power BI users, I don't really need to know that I'm using Data Activator. And that just makes it super simple for people to just say, hey, I need an alert. And now my alert's running. It's there ready. I'm all good. I'm going to start getting some Teams messages or emails, whatever I selected, as soon as this value changes.
That's fantastic.
So this is something that
this is completely integrated. Yeah,
everybody can go use this now. Right, you can go try this out straight away, assuming you've got Fabric, assuming you've got a Fabric Premium capacity, and it does need Fabric Premium. You can set up a trial. You can go try this out. Just you need to save that reflex item into a capacity.
So okay, all right. So I see how this works. How do I, if I'm a report user, come and manage all of my reflexes and now maybe you don't have a story for this. I don't know.
Not
But
yet.
let's say I've set up a whole bunch of them, and now I'm getting spammed, and
Yeah, sure.
my phone just is a vibrator at this point in time.
It's just going
That's all it
constantly.
does, right?
I mean, Jai said, like, can we get these alerts on mobiles? Like, yes. You send a Teams message, it will come through Teams mobile. If there's other ways that you want people to get alerted, like SMS, or if you want to get alerted through maybe like the Power BI app, I'd love to hear. Please use our ideas forum. I know there's been problems with the Power BI ideas forum in the past. When I was in the Power BI team, I understood the pain of using that. But because we're such a new product, there's not many Data Activator ideas. So if you go and tag it and say, hey, here's a Data Activator idea, put it in the right category, I'll see it. In fact, I've got a Data Activator alert that tells me when the number of alerts goes, the number of items goes up. So
right now, everyone,
we're really
God,
listening.
less than 5 minutes to submit an idea and have it show up on this
get it
live
out.
stream.
Yeah,
So
we'll see it show up. I think it's only checking once a day because it's actually going through a Power BI report, and I think it only refreshes once a day. So I won't see it yet, but I'll see it tomorrow. But please, let us know, like, what are the systems that you want to integrate with, both in terms of like the input that you need to listen for, what are the conditions you want to check for, and what are the actions you want to take. Those are the 3 buckets to think about. Like, if it doesn't do it today, we'll take the feedback, we'll do it. Yeah, categorization. That's a great idea. I think there's one on the forum already about that. If there isn't, it's a great thing. We should put it on there. We've heard it before. Being able to kind of categorize them appropriately. I'd love to know, like, what level of detail do you need? Like, just high, medium, low, high, medium, critical? Do you want a numeric ranking? Because if you think about all the alerts that might fly around in an organization, there could be loads. And everybody will make them high because everybody's stuff is important, right? Why would you ever use medium? I'm joking, but I want to know, like, what do we need to build for that? Is maybe high, medium, and critical is enough? Please let us know. That's great. Yeah, so that would be my main call to action to everybody here, is try it out and then give us that feedback on the ideas forum. I think it's because we're this new product. Like I said, we went to public preview in October. We're shipping every week, same as the rest of Fabric, and we can be really agile and adjust our plans based on people's feedback. And I'd love to do it. I would love to look at the ideas forum tomorrow and go, oh, wow, I'm going to throw my plan out the window because everybody's asking for something different. We'll build what people need.
And I can attest that Will and the entire Fabric platform, especially when products are in preview, like, your ability to respond is why I'm not a Tableau developer today. Like, that just blew me away at how fast you were able to actually make changes to the service and these capabilities. So please go out and post your ideas out on the website. Gosh dang it. My short-term memory is just gone to garbage. Ideas.fabric.microsoft.com.
It's there, yeah. And I'll plug the community forums as well. So community.fabric.microsoft.com. If you've got questions or ideas, or I'd love to hear more about kind of the scenarios that you think it would be useful for. If you can't kind of boil it down to a particular idea and you just want to kind of give us a bit of feedback and have a conversation. So like I said, there's me, there's 2 PMs who report to me. We're about to hire a third. We check those forums pretty much every day. If we don't, it probably means we're sick or on holiday or whatever. I mean, the downside of having a small team is when one person's not around. So one of the guys was just on paternity leave. He's just come back, but he had we spent 3 months, including the launch period, with me and one other person. And it's like, that's not enough to launch a product. We've been really busy.
I won't make that comment, but my phone thing never worked. I don't know. We didn't do this, so.
We didn't get to that bit, but that's
all right. Okay, all right, good deal. Just making sure I wasn't missing something here. Awesome, Will. Well, I'm very grateful that you took this time out of your day to show us what Data Activator is, answer some great questions, and honestly, like I think like Jai's got some great ideas around categorizing alerts, and maybe even just spitballing here in the UI, allow us to like put in an escalation. All right, like if it's a low value thing, here's my limits. Here's how I want to get notified. Like if it's medium, right? Like allow me to fill out what I want on there, and just natively create that like navigational experience for people without
Yeah,
having
it's a
to
nice
do
one.
much, right? Like that'd be
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah, it's a good one. Thank you. Cool.
Yeah.
And you know, if anybody else has got questions or thoughts or anything, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm not on Twitter that much anymore. I do occasionally check it. I use Blue Sky a bit more, trying to get away from Twitter because I'm not a big fan of the platform anymore. But yeah, LinkedIn's great place to find me. I actually use that. I find myself using that way more in the last couple of months than I've ever done before. It's interesting.
And I will say, there's equal representation of YouTube and LinkedIn viewers. LinkedIn is above
That's
my my YouTube viewership, so I just gotta get LinkedIn to monetize me. So awesome. Well, thank you very much, Will. Thank you everyone for spending your lunch hour with us. We really appreciate it. Will, any parting last words?
No, that's great. Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate the time to come and spread the message about Data Activator and get people using it.
All right, awesome. Thanks, everybody. Peace.
Cheers, folks. See ya.
Baker Tilly Digital combines strategic industry insight and advanced technical expertise to uncover and solve your digital transformation challenges. If you're interested in learning more, check out our website at bakertilly.com/digital.